One of the things that's been useful is when we're talking about, specifically about privilege, I talk a lot about my own experiences. Like when I first found out about this stuff, like, yeah, I was upset too, and it bothered me too, and I didn't want to acknowledge it, and to sort of narrate to them that their responses are normal, their responses are totally okay, that it's okay to feel defensive, it's okay, but that, and that also a lot of times, and then I say that this happened to me too, students sort of feel personally responsible. They're like, well, or they try to say they're not responsible. Like, and I empathize with them, and then I also sort of encourage them to think about their personal implications, but then also to maybe take a little bit of a step back and sort of give them a little bit of distance, because that can sometimes make them more comfortable. Say, you know, this does affect you in your personal life, and of course I want you to think about that, but we're also thinking about, this is sort of an academic, in some way, study of a larger social phenomenon. So, you know, maybe you can step back and think about, well, let's think about this really big social system and what's kind of influenced, and sometimes that can give them a little bit of breathing room, that they don't feel quite so personally implicated, that it becomes more of this feature of the world or a feature of our society that we're learning about, that you're a part of, but you're not sort of necessarily 100% responsible for. So that, yeah, which students are talking a lot. I try to really give students who haven't spoken a chance to speak. I try to do activities where students have a chance to write their thoughts down or discuss in small groups. I really try to get an opportunity for every student to sort of speak and be heard in various contexts. And some students are much more comfortable speaking in small groups or in pairs than they are in the large group, and that's okay, and I respect that. Yeah, it can be a little bit difficult to get international students to speak, especially if they're not super confident with their spoken English. And so that's something that I'm still kind of trying to navigate, and I think trying to do the writing exercises beforehand and trying to be sort of very explicit about having a discussion prompt written down. So that this past year I tried just-in-time teaching, where I would have them complete questions, just small short answer questions on a course before coming to class. Yeah, so it was in tests and surveys. I called them warm-up questions. So what they had to do was they had to submit them. The class met at like, I think it was like 3. I think it met at like 3, and so I would have by 10 a.m. that morning, and they could submit at any time up until then, but by 10 a.m. that morning they had to submit the answers, and it was usually 3 to 4 questions, and they were pretty basic kind of comprehension questions, just really for me to sort of check where they were with it, and then I would always ask sort of an open-ended question at the end. Is there anything you don't understand? Is there anything that, I think it was, is there anything, after reading this, is there anything that's still not clear to you, and what would you like to make sure we discuss in class today? So that was good in a lot of ways, and one of the things that my students, especially the students who really like the warm-up questions, what I would do is in my PowerPoint for that day, I would go through and pull out their questions and sort of categorize them. And I wouldn't put their names on them, but I think that they really enjoyed knowing that, like, wow, okay, I had a question on this concept and like 5 other people in this class had it too. So what I would do is I would group them into, I would sort of put the question, and then in parentheses I would put how many people had either that exact question or something like that. One of the things when I first started, I sort of just gave them the ground rules. I just said, okay, hey, these are the rules, and they were, you know, super basic, but what I've started to do is actually have them kind of brainstorm, like think about discussion classes, what worked well, what didn't, what did you like, what didn't you like, can we come up with some rules together? And invariably, I've been doing this for like I think 4 semesters now, and invariably they come up with the exact same rules that I would have given them, but it gives them a sense of ownership, and it gives them a sense of kind of knowing why those things might be and where they might come from. So that's a really small kind of tweak, but it's one I would definitely recommend. I like to give students a lot of feedback on their written work. I think that that's really important. So I will, I like to give them lots of feedback, and good, and not just what they had wrong, but I try to, I make comments throughout, and then for most students, especially with their major papers, at the end of the paper I'll actually write them a paragraph of several sentences saying, hey, I really liked what you did here, I thought this was a great idea, and I sort of try to do the compliment sandwich where, I start out like, I really like this thing that you did, this is really great, you picked a really cool topic, so sort of start out and then say, these are some things I was unsure on, maybe these are some things you could work on next time, or in your revision, and then sort of end with, but I thought it was great, or something positive.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's, I try to, and it's time consuming to do it, but I hope that signals to them, at least in some ways, that I did take the time to really engage with their ideas. I've been moving more into trying to be as explicit, and I'm actually more explicit with them about it, that I'm like, the clearer I can be with you about what I want,
mm-hmm.
the more likely it is that you'll be able to sort of give me what I want. So I try to spend a lot of time giving out really detailed, for most assignments that I assign, I'll put up a Word document on course that has extremely detailed instructions. It might have an example, it has a rubric. I've just recently started using rubrics. And sort of telling them, like, I want you to succeed, like, I want you to do well, here's what you need to do well. Trying to give them all the tools and demystify the process as much as possible. And I think that helps, because I really do want them to be able to see and understand that, I am on their side. I do want them to succeed.